All right, let's dive into a question that has baffled pretty much everyone for decades. How do antidepressants actually work? We're going to peel back the layers today and get right into the incredible and constantly evolving science of how these medications really try to reboot the brain.
So here's the big question, the real mystery that's going to drive our whole conversation. Antidepressants get to work changing your brain chemistry within hours of the very first pill. So why the agonizing wait? Why does it take weeks, sometimes longer, to actually feel better? The answer, it turns out, is way more fascinating than just a simple chemical top-up.
Okay, so to get to the bottom of that delay, we first have to start with a classic game plan, the one that's been the go-to for more than 50 years, and it's all about getting a handle on the flow of information between your brain cells.
I want you to think of your brain as this huge, unbelievably complex computer network. The neurons are the circuits, and for one circuit to talk to another, it releases a little chemical messenger that has to jump across a tiny gap. That's the synapse, to get caught by the next neuron. That whole process? That's neurotransmission. It's literally the language of your brain.
Now, let's meet the key players in this whole drama, the monoamine messengers. For a long time, depression has been linked to something going wrong with these three. You've got serotonin, the one everyone's heard of, that handles mood. Then there's norepinephrine, which is all about your energy and focus. And of course, dopamine, the engine for motivation and pleasure. So the classic strategy is actually pretty genius in its simplicity. See, after one of these messengers delivers its signal, it usually gets sucked back up, recycled, by the neuron that sent it. This is done by something called a reuptake pump. While classic antidepressants just block those pumps. They jam the recycling system, which means more of that chemical messenger is left hanging around in the gap, giving it more chances to get its message across.
And that one simple idea leads us to the main families of these drugs. First up, you've got the SSRIs, probably the most famous ones. They selectively block just the serotonin pump. Then you have the SNRIs, which take a broader approach, blocking the pumps for both serotonin and norepinephrine. And then there are the NDRIs, which go after the norepinephrine and dopamine pumps, which can be really helpful for tackling things like low energy and motivation.
And here's a really cool little wrinkle. Some SNRIs are kind of known for having 2.5 actions. What does that mean? Well, they directly block serotonin and norepinephrine pumps, sure, but they also give an indirect boost to dopamine, but only in the prefrontal cortex, your brain's mission control. It's a little biological quirk, but it can provide a nice extra lift for focus and cognition.
Okay, so if these pumps get blocked almost right away, we are right back at our central mystery. What is the deal with the delay? Well, it turns out the secret isn't in that initial chemical change. It's all about how the brain, slowly and kind of reluctantly, adapts to it.
This quote right here, this is where the light bulb really went on for scientists. They noticed that the weeks-long wait for the medicine to work lined up perfectly with this slow biological process called desensitization. Basically, the brain pushes back at first, and it just takes time for the drug to win that tug of war.
Let's walk through this step by step, because this is really the heart of the matter. So the drug blocks the pumps, and serotonin starts to build up. But, and this is the key, it builds up first around the neuron's control center, not at the end where the signal gets sent out. This initial flood hits the neuron's own emergency brakes. They're called autoreceptors. And what do? They slam on the brakes and actually slow down serotonin release. It's the brain trying to keep things stable. But over weeks of this constant chemical pressure, those brakes just wear out. They get desensitized. And once those brakes are finally offline, the neuron is free to unleash a huge surge of serotonin exactly where we need it. That's the moment when people start to feel better.
You can see why this whole slow, roundabout process got researchers thinking, okay, is there a way to speed this up? Can we be smarter about this? Can we design drugs that are more direct than just blocking a pump and then waiting around for weeks? So the new goal became about building a kind of a Swiss Army knife for the brain. Instead of drugs that just do one thing, block a pump, the idea was to create medications that could do two things at once, block the pump and directly interact with specific receptors to get a faster, cleaner result. And this new approach has led to some really interesting stuff. You have SRIs, for example. They block the serotonin pump, but they also directly hit that 5-HT1A receptor, the exact same brake we were just talking about. The whole idea is to wear those brakes out way faster. Then you have MMAs, which are super complex. They hit a whole bunch of different receptors to boost 5 different chemical messengers. and SARS, which block serotonin receptors that often cause side effects, and, as a cool bonus, that action ends up boosting norepinephrine and dopamine too. And then there's a drug like mirtazapine, which basically just throws the entire playbook right out the window. It doesn't block a single reuptake pump, nope. Instead, its main trick is something called alpha-2 antagonism. The best way to think about this is that it literally cuts the brake lines on both the norepinephrine and serotonin neurons, just forcing them to release more juice. It's a totally different road to get to the same city.
But, even with all these clever designs, we're often still talking about weeks. The real game changer, the holy grail of this research, has always been speed. And just recently, we've seen a genuine, full-on paradigm shift.
And that's where ketamine comes in. For the first time, we've got a medication that can produce antidepressant effects in a matter of hours, not weeks. And how does it do it? By completely ignoring all those classic monoamine messengers we've been talking about. Its target is a totally different system, glutamate, the brain's main on switch.
So how does it work so fast? Well, it's this incredible domino effect. Ketamine blocks a certain glutamate receptor. And here's the clever part, it blocks it on the brake neurons. So by turning off the brakes, it causes other really important neurons to just fire off a massive coordinated burst of glutamate all at once. It's like a chemical flashbang in the brain that jumpstarts everything.
And that huge burst of glutamate, it kicks off a process called Synaptogenesis. It's a fancy word for something amazing, the literal, physical building of new connections between neurons. We think that things like chronic stress and depression cause these connections to wither away. Ketamine seems to launch a rapid response repair crew, physically rebuilding those broken circuits in just a few hours.
This gives us the perfect way to picture the two different philosophies here. The classic drugs, they're like trying to slowly fill a reservoir. It takes weeks for the water level to rise high enough to make a difference downstream. But these rapid responders like ketamine, they're totally different. They're like throwing open a giant floodgate, causing an immediate surge that kicks off a massive construction project in the brain, right now.
And believe me, ketamine is just the tip of the iceberg. Its success has blown the doors wide open for exploring totally new ways to treat depression. Scientists are now looking at neuroactive steroids and even using things like melatonin agonists to try and reset the body's internal clock as a way to fight depression. It's a whole new frontier.
So all this leaves us with one final and really hopeful question. For so long, treatment has been a game of waiting for that reservoir to slowly fill. But this new science, it suggests a future where that might not have to be the case. The idea of repairing brain circuits in a matter of hours, that's not science fiction anymore. It's the frontier that scientists are exploring as we speak.